So when we looked at eligibility, that's a pretty pragmatic view of what they've done in the past and an assessment of whether they can do what we need them to do in the future. Suitability seems a lot more subjective.
And Jim, it is. We're talking about the intrinsic qualities that make somebody excel in a job. And that is something that's hard to discern really in a reliable way in an interview process. As I have looked at this, one thing that I was trying to do is to provide business people with concrete data. And obviously, suitability, it doesn't lend itself naturally to that. The good thing is today we have tremendous advancements in assessment technology that will give us really good insight into suitability factors.
Well, like you, I'm a big believer in assessments. I've had the good fortune to take about 20 of them. And the good news is that I can share is that when you look at all those results, they're pretty much pointing to the same guy. So how would an organization go about choosing the right assessment, and probably as importantly, how do you use it in the right way?
One thing that I really encourage clients to look at when they're choosing an assessment is to make sure that it's job-based. There have been great advancements in job-based technologies as opposed to the 60 years of personality type tests that people have tried to use. Personality traits or personality tests give you insight into one dimension of a person. They're not designed to tell you if the person can perform well on the job. So if you're looking for an assessment that is going to support suitability traits as they relate to a specific job, you want an assessment that is job-based. An assessment is a good job-based assessment if the author can demonstrate that it is based on research of specific job success performance over a number of people for an extended period of time. If you have that, then you're going to get an instrument that is more predictive of job success. Also, look for a questionnaire that's easy to administer. I mean, we're business people, we're not psychologists. You want something that's going to be simple, something that's going to be usable for your organization. In today's environment, you want it to be web-based. The other thing I look for is an assessment that is easy to understand, that has narratives. If you have to get consultants in to administer it, if your managers really can't embrace the technology and understand what the data is telling them, then it's really not going to be usable in your organization. I think as you look at this in any business decision, if you get an analysis that's overly complex or not easy to follow, it gets discounted in the organization. So find something where you like the narratives, where it's relevant to the job, and where your managers can really understand it and embrace it. Something else that I look at is the number of traits that an instrument has. A lot of instruments have 10 to 30 traits. That will give you some insight. Other instruments have 100 or more. And I like to go with the ones that are 100 or more. I describe in the book that I'm married to an interior designer, and when we married, it was like I had the 8-pack of crayons and she had the jumbo pack. And as I've learned over the years that there are a lot of subtleties of color that you pick up, and that the range of colors is really the best way to create the most beautiful picture. So I like assessments that are going to give that range of color because it begins to give you nuance in the traits. You get more traits and you can begin to pick up things that are really going to impact your organization. Something else I look for in an assessment is it customizable? We all have top performers in our organization, our stars. And those are the people that we want to hire more of. You know, we have Jim. Jim's doing a great job. He's our all-star. We want to clone Jim. What's the secret sauce with Jim? What do I mean by secret sauce? I actually have a client who loved the barbecue shrimp at Pascal Manali's here in New Orleans, where I live, and tried to replicate it, and not successful. Then one day he looked on the internet, and he saw the recipe, and he goes, "Oh, that's what I was missing." And so, you know, people are like that as well. You have a high performer, and yes, looks like other high performers, has those core traits, but there may be something just a little different. We'd love to be able to find out what's that secret ingredient, what's that secret sauce. And I'll give you an example of that. Again, a national life insurance company. When we looked at all of their high performers, a common characteristic for them was they all had a very, very high score on teaching. When you think about it, it makes sense. What activity are they doing all day? They're teaching people about life insurance or financial products. They're explaining instruments all day. They're teaching all day. And that was part of their secret sauce. And when we begin to look at traits in individuals, we can customize a template to say, yeah, we want to select for that trait.
So Logan, it sounds like you're advocating that a way to get started with assessments is to run some of your top performers through the assessment to see what characteristics they might have. Am I reading that right?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, when I engage with a client, I ask them if we can have assessments on their high performers and also some people who they feel they would like to see more development in. What that does for me is it tells me that this data is predictive of success in your organization. And if it's not, then obviously that's not the data you want to get the people equation right. I had an interesting experience with that just recently. I had a new client and I said, let's go ahead and get assessments on your top performers and some people that you think, gosh, I'd like to see them develop. And what's good about that kind of information is you're certainly not going to use an assessment to fire somebody, but you can see the areas where you can specifically target development. So it's a positive process all the way around. The CEO gave me the list of people because the chief operating officer happened to be out of the country. So I went forward, we got all of the data, and I'm looking at it, and what was very interesting was it was highly predictive of everybody except there was this one guy who the CEO had told me was their number 2 performer, and he was at the bottom of the list, and I'm going, I just don't see this. There's something wrong with this data. We've got to talk about that. So I got on the phone, the chief operating officer was back in town, or CEO, chief operating officer and me, and we're talking about it, and I said, guys, I just have to tell you, we've got something here that I'm not comfortable with, because this guy, who I understand is one of your top performers, is at the bottom of the list. And the chief operating officer said, he's not at the top of the list. I fired that guy. We brought him back because we just were short-handed. So no, we don't want to predict his performance. Yes, that's what we want. And I think that's what you want. When you're looking at an assessment, you've got to feel confident in the data. I can look and I can say, we've done the validation studies, we've looked at this on any good instrument, you're going to have all of that, but you're making the business decision. It's got to be data that supports you, and you have to have confidence in it, and your people have to have confidence in it. So yes, I heartily recommend that you start any assessment by making sure that it's predictive of your top performers.